Hey, Nicole Roberts Jones here, and welcome to another episode of the Meaningful Work Podcast, a time that I connect with you to really give you all the tips, tools, insight, strategy to live a life and do work that gives your life meaning and fulfillment. Beyond excited. Now, listen, we are closing up on this season one. Would love to hear from you and hear your takeaways, the things you've learned, the insight. But as this episode is going live, yesterday was my birthday. So I thought, you know what? I want to give you a gift for my birthday. And so it dropped then in my spirit to share with you 56 lessons that I've learned about meaningful work over the last 56 years of my life. And so this is going to be a three-part series because there's no way. My goal is always to be here for 30 minutes and no longer because I know you're busy. So this will be a three-part series. But in order for me to share the 56 lessons, because guess what, y'all? I had to edit out. I can share so much more than that. I realized that I had to break it up into 8 chapters. Okay. So I'm going to share 56 lessons, but they will be in 8 chapters. So grab your pen because I'm going all the way in. And those of you that are listening on one of your favorite audio sources know that there are slides. And because I'm going to go quickly, we're going to do 2 chapters today. I think it's 2. We'll see where I am at the end of the slides. 8 chapters through the 3-part series. So I'll walk you through 56 lessons. So I'm always going to suggest you come over to my YouTube channel, nrjnetwork.com. Again, that's nrjnetwork.com so that you can see all the slides and get all the insight. All right. So first chapter that we're going to start with is, of course, what do you guys think it's going to be? My favorite topic, purpose, of course. And so also I'm going to, when I can, I'm going to, share with you what episodes I dig deeper into these topics because I'm only going to get to give a service level and they'll be in the show notes. So even if I don't reference them here, please, I suggest you look in the show notes because there'll be more. So if there are areas where I share and you need more, I'll link the episode that is connected to that. Okay. So for this one, the episodes that are connected to this are my second, third, and fourth episodes of this podcast, which was called Cracking the Code, Secrets to Discovering Meaning in Your Work. So if you have questions around your purpose and you don't understand it, I gave you the strategy I've walked clients through over the last 30 years. Whew, how old are you? 56? Yeah, last 30 years, y'all. So understand what their purpose is, okay? So lesson number 1 is never compromise your why. Now, that could be for relationships because there have been times that I've been dating in relationships and men didn't understand my purpose and they would get mad at me or try to stop me from doing things. Or even when you're in a job and you know what your why is, and maybe you're up for a promotion, which is not connected to your why. What I've learned is if I keep my eyes on the prize, which is my why, my purpose, my reason for existence, then all things always work together for the good. Mhm. So, in order to do that, the other thing I had to learn is number 2, stop playing small. See, what I realized is God is intentional. See, when you were born, He intentionally gave you gifts and talents. And when I stand in the full power of them, matter of fact, one of my favorite Bible verses, and I didn't know I was going to reference this one here, Matthew 5, I think it's 14 or is it 16? Let your light so shine among men and women. I think it's 5:16, Matthew 5:16. If it's not 16, y'all look 14. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Actually, let me look it up. Um, Let your light so shine among men and women that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Trying to find my Bible app. And the reason I'm bringing up this Bible verse now is when you're playing small, you're not shining. You're dimming your light. You're playing small, right? So that is 16. Let your light so shine. So it's Matthew 5:16. Now, a great example of this, and I did put this Bible verse on a note, is the story of Jeremiah in the Bible. So you can look it up, Jeremiah 1:5-8. And I love the conversation that Jeremiah had with God. And here it is. This is what God said to him, and then listen to what Jeremiah says back to God. Starting again in verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations. Then said I, so this is Jeremiah talking back to God, "Oh Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a youth." But the Lord said to me, "Do not say I am a youth, For you shall go to all to whom I send you, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of their faces, for I'm with you to deliver you, says the Lord. Now, the reason I'm sharing Jeremiah's story here is it makes me remember when I started my own journey, right? And I remember when I had started a program for teenage girls at my church. And I remember, and I'm going to tell this story quickly. And I don't remember if I told this on episode or not. So I'm going to tell it quickly because we got a lot to cover. Still want to try to get done in 30 minutes. But I remember the church that I founded my teenage youth program was first had me 18,000 members at the time in Los Angeles, was the first, I think, mega church. And anytime I had to make an announcement, I would write it out and then train my girls, called it leadership development, and let them make the announcement on Sunday mornings, not me. So one particular Sunday, Pastor Murray says, I send, well, let me back up. The way you get your announcements approved is you send it into pastor's assistant, and pastor's assistant will call you and say it's approved. But this particular week, when I sent it into pastor's assistant, she called me back and said, pastor actually wants to make your announcement. And he said just to bring it in the pulpit on Sunday. So I'm so excited that pastor himself wants to make my announcement. So y'all got to know on Sunday, I put on my baddest outfit because I was going in the pulpit. And literally, I walked into the pulpit and I handed pastor my note. Well, I tried to, and he pulled my hand to sit down. So I sat down. And then, those of you that go to AME church before announcements, we sing Spirit of the Living God. Well, at least we did it. I don't know if every AME church sings Spirit of the Living God, but we're singing Spirit of the Living God. And I'm still trying to have pastor my note. He won't take it. So to make an even longer story short, when announcement time comes, he pushes me up to the microphone. Y'all probably saw that coming. I didn't. And let me tell you, I was shaking so hard. Those of you that listen, that's my paper shaking, right? So if my paper is shaking, I can't read what's on the paper. So I don't know what I said. I don't know if my sentences went together. I don't know if I made sense. I said something and I pretty much ran out of the pulpit. Thought I was going to fall, by the way, because my legs were shaking so hard. Now I remember after I calmed down from all my nerves, I was so angry at my pastor. I was pissed, if I'm be honest. I couldn't wait to go back into pastor's office after church was over to give pastor a piece of my mind, respectfully. So when I get back there, and those of you that know Pastor Murray are new, God rest his soul, my mentor, my everything. I learned so much from him. Anyway, let me not start because I'll start crying. But anyway, I walked back in his office and he goes, "Daughter." And I'm thinking, why is he so happy? So he goes on to say, "You know why I did that? Because you're humble. You would never try to be seen, and God is propelling you forward." I realized in that moment that I had been playing small, that I've been letting fear, I've been letting perception, I've been letting everything else keep me from what I knew God was calling me to do. After that conversation in his office, do you know, churches started calling me out of nowhere? So the third lesson I learned from this is that I had to start to be unapologetically me. There are going to be some people that get me and some people that don't. Some people that are going to be haters. And usually, can I tell you why people hate on you? Because usually you're drumming up something significant in them and they're not ready. Not your fault. As Marian Wright Edelman's quote says, when your light shines, you give people unconscious permission to let their light shine as well. Well, that unconscious permission, some people want it and some people don't. You've got to stop worrying about what everybody else thinks and be the woman, the man that God created you to be unapologetically, not rudely, but clear, focused, and uncompromising. And then the next thing I had to learn is to do it. Oh, excuse me. Look, I'm looking ahead of myself. I had to identify what makes work meaningful for me. The same way I'm suggesting you make and identify what makes work meaningful for you. So what I realized is my gift is producing and casting. I did that in entertainment. That was my first job out of college. I worked in casting and production. And when I felt God shifting me, and that's going to be the next, I'll talk more about the shift in number 5 in a second. But when I felt the shift, what I realized is that I shifted careers. God still was using that same gift, casting and production. Because even in the career I'm in now, because I just went through another shift. So in June of 2025, I started as a director of career services at UDC, University of District of Columbia. Didn't see that shift coming, but here's what I'm still doing, you all, casting and production. producing programs, and putting people in the right roles. Because now I'm working with all the students. My team is working with all the students. And so looking at all the ways that we can foster them getting in the right role. So I have really gotten clear on what my calling is. And when you identify that, then you understand what makes life meaningful, or work and life meaningful for you, because then you only do work that's in alignment with that. So, in order to do that, and I kind of just alluded to this, number five, life is about levels. Listen, this conversation that I had with Pastor Petrie, his episode, again, I'll link that in show notes. Let me write a note so I remember, because now I'm remembering episodes, right? We talked about this. See, God never intended your life to be on one level. Just like we matriculate through education, we don't stay in kindergarten the whole time we're in school. We go kindergarten and then first and second and junior high and high schools, some to college, some grad school, and on and on and on. Life is meant to live that way as well. So, what I've learned is that when I get to a place that I've learned everything I can on this level, God is always going to shift me to my next level, just like God is going to shift you to yours. And some of you going through an economic hard time in this country, some of you, it's time to shift your level. I'm gonna leave that right there because we're not talking about work right now. Sixth lesson I learned, I was gonna say this a minute ago when I was talking about my pastor pushing me in front of that microphone, is I had to learn to do it afraid. I think oftentimes we think that we're gonna do and there's not gonna be any fear present. Not true. I had to learn that when fear comes, it's because I'm doing something I've never done before. So, of course, it's going to be scary. But I also believe that God puts us in situations and circumstances. So we have to trust Him. So when you're trusting God, your flesh will be afraid, especially if you're playing big. And I remember being on a mastermind call years ago, and Ayanna Van Zant was our teacher that night. And she said, and I quote, if you don't feel like you need to pee on yourself sometimes, you ain't playing big enough. And I wrote in the comments, I said, that's why I always feel like I need depends, laugh out loud. And she had a good laugh that I said that, but that's real. Because even as I felt my shift happening at the end of last year, going into this year, as we're ending out 2025, I didn't know that God was leading me back into, listen, when I started this podcast, I told you guys I was getting certified in career development because I felt like God was pulling me into a career development space. Who knew that I was going to go back into university? Now, listen, I've been an adjunct professor in three PWI, predominantly white institutions. Not only am I back into university system, but I'm working at a HBCU. So I get to give back to kids that look like me. Never could have seen it coming. Anyway, all those things you got to do it afraid. Seventh lesson is live out your values at work. Had a great conversation with Monica Cost. Her episode was called How Values Lead to Fulfillment. You know, whether I'm talking about at work, and dare I say, if you're in a relationship and it's not working, usually you're bumping up against each other's values. You know, what I have found in this thing called life, and this was me included for years, is successful executive women don't stop long enough sometimes to define what your values are. And you wonder why things aren't working. You wonder why there's certain team members that rub you the wrong way. It's because your values are out of alignment. When you begin to understand what your values are and how they're bumping against that value, then you can work with them in a different way. My eighth lesson, and there's so many lessons I can work in purpose, but listen, y'all, you're gonna hear purpose threaded through everything I talk about because purpose is my jam, right? Number eight is you got to celebrate your progress and celebrate your success. I think oftentimes we get to a milestone and then we're on to our next. We don't stop long enough to celebrate our own self, to identify you did that and have a little party for yourself. Stop waiting for other people to celebrate you. You celebrate you. Take yourself out to dinner. Go take yourself to the spa. Do something to celebrate yourself when you have a win and acknowledge what you have done. Here's a great assignment. Create your already done list. Take out a sheet of paper. Didn't know I was going to say this. Take out a sheet of paper, and I want you to write out all the things you've already done. Graduated from college, had children if you had children. Did you get a promotion? Think about your first job. You know, I think about the first internship I ever had, which was at BET, and how I had to call and push myself into that internship. I pretty much told them because they weren't hiring interns, listen, I'm free. Why would you not hire somebody that's free that works as hard as I work? And I got that internship and then I got a job offer. So all those things, stop and think about your life. all the places you've won. I think sometimes we focus so much on the other things we didn't do. Today, I want to encourage you and challenge you to celebrate all the things you have already done. So that's our chapter on purpose. Again, you're going to hear purpose weave throughout. Our second chapter that I'm going to share for this episode is money. Money, money, money. Right, I can't sing, but y'all know what song I'm trying to sing. So, first lesson I learned in money and around meaningful work is that I had to identify my bankroll zip code. Now, if you guys didn't listen to any of our episodes, was a I think 4-part series. God wants you to be wealthy. Go back and listen to it because I talked about this, but I'm gonna say it quickly. See, I realized that although I don't live in South Central LA anymore, which is where I'm from, and that neighborhood would have had my life defined by jail, drugs, and drive-by shootings if it had its chance. But even after I moved out of it, having a multiple six-figure business, I still was living, my mindset was still living there. How many of you guys grew up and your mom or parents or family would say, money doesn't grow on trees or got to rob Peter to pay Paul or any of those things? I was still living in those things. So first you got to identify where your mindset lives. And then the second thing I had to do, which I encourage you to do, is shift the way I view making money. So again, I go into this in depth, but I had to shift how I looked at money. What I realized is money is energy. Money is energy. Matter of fact, Proverbs 10:22 says, "The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it." I had to stop feeling guilty for making money. I had to start realizing that I really, and I'm gonna say this probably somewhere else, I deserve to make money. But I had to stop focusing on money in the way I was focusing on it, which moves us to number 11. You got to look at source versus resource. See, money is a resource, God is our source. I had to realize that every great and good thing comes from my source, and it's just a resource for me to do the things that I need to do in this life to live and be and breathe and have my being to be able to pay my mortgage, to be able to pay my Wi-Fi to shoot this episode, to be able to do all the things that I'm able to do in this world, to take a great vacation, to celebrate myself, or celebrate my marriage, or celebrate the season, or whatever I want to celebrate in that moment. But again, money is a resource. God is our source. And I've really had to begin to shift and understand that, listen, I talk about this in, again, go watch the God Wants You to Be Wealthy 4-part series that I did. Money is mammon. And I break down what it means and all of that in that episode. But I had to stop looking at money as my focus and shift to God as my focus. That shifted really how I began to look at money. 12th lesson is I had to learn the difference between good debt and bad debt. Again, I had to learn the difference between good debt and bad debt. See, good debt is going to college and maybe you might have to take out a student loan. Bad debt is, ooh, those shoes are bad and I need those shoes. I'm gonna put it on the credit card. And I really had to learn the difference. And once I learned the difference, the next thing I learned, number 13, is the power of investing in myself. See, with each new level, I realized I needed a new level of my brilliance to get to that place. So, even as I shared with you all, at the end of last year, I went through my certification program to become a certified uh, career service professional. That's what it is, certified career service professional, right? Which was a career development space. But even in doing that, as I was sitting in those classes, it began to show me and begin to really prepare me for the job that I then got 6 months after that. Didn't know what God was up to, but I had to invest in that. It wasn't free. You get what you give, what you invest in yourself comes back to you. So every investment I've ever made for the right reasons, the good investments, always comes back. So I had to begin to really understand the power of investing in myself and stop looking for a hookup and how can I get a discount and can I do it free? If you want it free, listen, the there's a saying that the amount you give is what you're gonna get back. So if I want it free, I want a hookup, then I'm not gonna get much back. But if I give myself the time and resources to build the brilliance that is inside me, God is always going to give that back to you. Now, final chapter for this episode, chapter number 3 is work. Now, of course, I had to do a one on work. And you're going to hear how some of my purpose is going to be present here too. So, Number 14, I had to let go of the list I made in my 20s. How many of you guys made a list, whether it was when you graduated from high school, whether it was when you were in college, of all the things you wanted to do or be? See, my list was I was going to be an executive producer. I still am an executive producer. It's just not the way I envisioned it was going to happen. Y'all get that? So when you let go of your list, you realize, I said this a few minutes ago, life is meant to be lived on levels. That list wasn't the level that God had for me. There's a saying that God, man makes plans and God laughs because God's plans are usually bigger for us than we have for ourselves. So when you begin to let go of your list and really begin to open yourself up for what's possible, and you do it afraid, then you begin to see listen, when I left entertainment, I didn't see that I was going to start a program for teenage girls and have 13 chapters of that program in 13 states. I didn't see that I was going to get offered to be an adjunct professor. I didn't apply for that job, y'all. When I was in grad school, my teacher said, come teach or come share with our class about your business. And she said, you should teach. And I thought, okay, I don't have a PhD. While I was in my head, she had called the dean of the school. Dean called me and made an offer. When I moved from LA to Boston, the dean called and said, Nicole, I don't see you on the list, on the roster for teaching this semester. And I said to her, hey, wait a minute. I left you a message. You didn't get it that I was moving. I wonder why you didn't call me back. She called Boston University, not me. I got a call from Boston University, like we heard you moved here and we'd love to have you on our adjunct team. So I'm sharing that with you because, again, you don't understand where God is taking you. All those things. And then all of that was a catalyst for me to close my nonprofit, start my for profit, coaching professional women and a few good men around career development, leadership development, team development, all and business growth, and all the things I did in the 30 years of my business. And then, even with that, so I'm sharing all that to say to you, all those things I didn't see in my 20s, but God did. God knows the end from the beginning if we can focus and trust Him. Next lesson, building healthy boundaries at work. Listen, you're going to know the difference between a friend and a colleague at work. And sometimes some people will try to stretch that boundary. And some people you will begin to understand that you can stretch the boundary with a little bit because you become friends. Like I have some great girlfriends now that I met at work. But initially, if you don't build those boundaries, some people will take advantage of knowing insight about you, of being intimate with you. I mean, intimate, like intimate information. I'm not talking about sex, but that too, right? So you've got to begin and understand how to build healthy boundaries at work so that who you be and your personal business doesn't hinder your professional life, right? Number 16, the importance of my impact and how I serve others. Again, this is part of what I learned when I shifted how I looked at money and began to look at it as a resource. And then I began to realize that everything, every place God is calling me to is for me to serve other people. It's not about me, right? See, God created each of us as an answer to a group of people that need us. And when you begin to understand that, it shifts how you view your work and how you view even making money. Okay. So next thing I had to do is understand number 17. Sorry, I'm not saying all the numbers, y'all. It's number 17. The power of focus. Now, here's why I say that. Because oftentimes I remember when I had my for-profit business, I got offered to go into another company, a bigger training and development company, and let my business go. And I worked in that business for 3 years, coaching, training, same stuff I'm doing now. Until 2015, when God told me it was time for me to come out and start my business again. Well, in 2016, after I started my business, many of you know that I worked with Steve Harvey and on his Act Like a Success division, and he was starting a whole new division. And his vice president called me and wanted me to work on content for that. And in that moment, I had a choice because that check, the zeros behind it, looking good. But I realized if I worked with him, it would have taken me off of my focus. It would have taken me away from my why. It would have taken me away from the thing I knew that had crafted and created me to do, and all the people that I was serving. That was a hard no, though. But can I tell you that I made that same amount in my business in that year because I focused? Hello, come on, somebody. Next thing, number 18, how to cultivate my purpose in the workplace. Now, I've kind of talked about this a little bit along the way, but the more I began to see my gift for producing and casting, the more I began to realize what God was doing was taking that to the next level. So I left entertainment and went into working with teenage girls. I was producing them and helping them get in the right position as they went and set off on their careers. Many of them, I look at them now and they're in their 40s. Ah, how could that be? Right. And looking at their families and careers and the things they're doing, proud of all of them. Many of them have PhDs, master's degrees, CEOs of businesses. I can go on and on. Proud, proud, proud. But even when that became time, it was time for that to be over. And God started moving me more into the entrepreneurial space and helping entrepreneurs and corporations get their team either in the right seat on a bus, which is still a purpose conversation, or it was team development, leadership development, all the things I did in the last 30 years of my business. I realized that I was producing and casting. My question to you is, what is your why, your greatest gift? And how do you begin to cultivate that in the work that you do? And what I mean by cultivate is, again, I said this, life is meant to be lived on levels, just like your career is too. So if you're at a place where you're bored or it doesn't feel big enough or any of those things, and I'm gonna talk about this in a second, understand what's happening is it's time to cultivate that gift to the next level. So I talked about this, by the way, and unlocking God's plan for your life, which I believe was our very first episode of this podcast. That's number 18. So number 19, stop overlooking what you have. Now, I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of this story, but in Second Kings 4, 1 through 7, again, Second Kings 4 through 1, 4, 1 through 7, there's a story called Elisha and the widow's oil. So again, I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of this story. So, and let me just read it. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophet cried out to Elijah, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take my sons to be his slaves. So, in other words, when your husband died, if you owed money, they take your kids, right? So Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil. So I want you to get this. This is verse number 2. She said, I have nothing but. So she's already overlooking what she has because she says, I have nothing but. So you do have something. Hello. So in verse 3, Elisha says to her, go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, then pour it into all the vessels and set aside the full ones. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass when the vessels were full that she said to her sons, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there is not another vessel. So the oil ceased. That she came and told the man of God, and he said, go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live off the rest. So she was overlooking what she had. She was playing small and minimizing it. You guys seeing how these all the lessons I've talked about are going together? And so I began to realize how I had been overlooking my own gift. That my gift for purpose is seeing how things naturally fit. My gift for collaborating and developing programs, my gift for developing teams, all those things, minimized it. Everybody can do that. No, everybody can't do it like I can. And so I really had to take time to understand that I am wired different than anybody else. There are other people that do what I do, yes, but nobody does it like me. Just like there are other people that do what you do, but nobody does it like you. So what are you overlooking about you? And how can you begin to cultivate it to grow into the woman, the man that God has created you to be? Not on the first level, second level, third level. Hey, let's talk about the penthouse level, right? Because again, remember I said life is meant to be lived on levels. So our final lesson for this episode is number 20. I had to learn to cultivate patience and perseverance. You know, oftentimes we want things to happen overnight. They're not going to happen overnight. And oftentimes we want things to happen in our own time. I'm gonna dig into this more in another step. And I had to learn to be patient, that God's time is perfect, and that sometimes it's gonna seem like things are taking forever. Great example of this is Joseph in the Bible. And I know I'm going to talk about Joseph in another episode. Joseph and his technical dream code. You know, he had a dream that he was going to rule his brothers. It would be, I think it was 13 years, or it might have been 30 years before it actually happened. He had to continue to hang in there and not give up. That's Genesis 37 through 50, chapters 37 through 50. We want to read the whole story. Okay. So that's our first 20 lessons. As we move throughout this series, I want to hear from you. I want to know which of the lessons in each episode really are hitting home for you, or lessons you've also learned, lessons you need to learn, all the things. Number one. Number two, share it. This is our last series, y'all. We're winding down on this season. And this is a great review, but it's also my gift to you to walk you through lessons I've learned in my life and how you can begin to develop the areas that you may need as well. All right. So, with that said, one, share your takeaways. Two, share this episode because there are other people that may need this insight. And until our next part two, where we walk through our next 18, we got what? How many left? 36 left to go. So 18 the next one and 18 in the last one. All right. So with that said, it's always my honor and privilege to be here with you, to pour into you. I look forward to seeing you in part two, y'all. Talk to you soon.